don't forget to hit start, and and we'll edit things out. And then let's look at Clubhouse.
Okay.
And like I was just gonna have it on speakerphone and then mute it so I don't hear anything from there.
Okay.
So it's not confusing. Let me navigate to where I'm supposed to be. My events. Let's see. We'll start the room. Okay, so I'm in there.
And I'm coming in there.
Okay, I see you.
Okay, so
I
I'll
see
mute myself.
Michelle. Okay, I have it turned all the way down. And let me turn hand raising off. And who knows, we'll see what happens there. I've not tried this before. So thanks for being open to
Do
it.
you want me to turn my volume all the way down on my phone?
Yeah, so that way it won't pick up my speech on your microphone.
Okay. And then
Okay.
once we go back, we can put it up. We can put it up.
Yeah, exactly. So I see one guest popping in.
Hey, Tange.
Oh, this is someone you know.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're going to be a tangular, tange,
It's just like Angela, but Tangela.
tangela.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to be recording. Hand raising's turned off, so you'll hear us starting pretty soon with the 6% podcast. So we'll do a little housekeeping first. So I have the Zoom recording. And I will, if it's okay, can I use the portions of your bio from your website and photos, or would you like to send me a media kit?
I'll send you one because I don't know what's on there.
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
It sounds great. And, I will record a lot of the getting to know you. So I like that to be fresh. And so,
Okay.
we'll kind of jump into it. I have a couple, questions that I have planned, but, if we go off on a tangent, that's part of the fun. And we
That's
go off
right.
on a tangent. And then I will usually wrap up with your number one piece of advice for women in male dominated fields.
Okay.
All
No
right, and
problem.
that'll kind of signal our end, and then we'll end the Zoom part and go over to Clubhouse and see who's there.
All right. Let's do it.
Awesome. And let's go ahead and ping. Let me ping people in.
Yeah, I'm
Why don't we
pinging people
do
in.
that?
I am pinging people in.
Let's see who's there, and that way I can once I ping, then um, I can just put that phone down and focus on our conversation here.
No problem.
So, a lot of people on this morning. Let's see. All right. Okay, those are all the people that are in the room. Hello, Pamela. Welcome. We're doing an experimental recording of we're not recording you guys, but recording this podcast. Um, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right. And I will have done an intro pre-recorded, and I'll base that off of your bio. And we will, when you're ready, let me know. We'll pause for a second, and we will go ahead and start.
Okay. Let me do one thing.
Please.
Try to
In
get
the meantime, welcome, Pamela. We're recording the podcast right around 11, maybe a little before 11:45. We'll open it up to Q&A.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, let's pause for a second. Today, I have Kelly Charles Collins, Esquire, here and MBA, here with me on the 6%. And I am so thrilled, Kelly, to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Nancy. I'm so happy to be here with you.
So I always like to go way, way, way back. I always like to find out what my guest's origin story is. And as you know, I have women who are thriving in male dominated fields here on this podcast. And it's always interesting to hear about childhood and influences and what kind of really made an imprint on you as you were growing up. So tell me about your childhood and the people who were influencing you at that time.
Well, I had an amazing childhood. I was born in Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica, then we moved to New York for a little while, and then we moved back to Jamaica. And who influenced me during those formative years before I moved to the United States when I was 9 is really my family. I spent a lot of time with my family. My mom is my everything. So when I was a little girl and a baby, I was always with my mom. I wouldn't eat if she wasn't around. When she would go to work, I would just sit and cry and wait till she came back home. And so they call me my mom's deodorant. And so that hasn't changed much in life. I'm still her deodorant. But she's really, when I think about who I am today and what I've accomplished and why I have been able to accomplish it, it's my mom. But I grew up around very strong women. My mom's sisters, all of my aunts, my sister, just very strong women who instilled in me that I could do and be anything that I wanted to be.
And you moved to the US permanently when you were 9?
Yes.
And what was that like?
Different.
I'm
you know,
sure.
so it was really interesting because I had no idea we were moving. I did really well. When I was younger, I did really well in school. In Jamaica, we have exams every year and they rate you in your class. And so I would come first in my class every year. And so my fifth grade year, I had come first. And usually the next year, what they do is take you to introduce you to your teachers so that you know where you're going. And this year, they didn't take me. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why didn't they take me? I was sad because I was first in my class. And so I didn't know. The school knew that I was leaving and they knew that I was leaving the country, but I had no idea. So it was very sad to leave all of my friends and all of that. And then, I moved to the United States. I mean, I was a kid, I was 9, so I don't really know, what feelings other than the sadness of leaving. And then moving to Miami. We moved to Miami. We had lots of family there, so it wasn't like moving to a totally strange place. And it's some place that I had been throughout my life. Living in Jamaica, we traveled a lot, and so it wasn't a foreign land to me coming to the U.S.
So when you came to the US and as you were growing up here, when did you become interested in law?
I became interested in law at the right bold age of 20.
Yeah?
Well,
Uh-huh.
actually 21. Actually 21. I went to law school on a whim. I had no desire to go to law school. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a banker or a truck driver. Those were the two things that I wanted to be. Had nothing to do with the law. But when I was getting my MBA, I was talking to a friend from high school, and he started talking about going to law school. And at the time, I had worked at a trust company in Providence, Rhode Island. That's where I was. And right next to the trust company was the courthouse. And I would go visit that courthouse during lunch or on breaks. And I just loved all the pomp and the circumstance of the courthouse. And so when he started talking about going to law school, at the time I was getting my MBA, I was 21. I was a single mom. I didn't know what else was going to happen in life. And I was like, oh, I can go to law school. I'll just go to law school. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And so I decided to take my LSAT and didn't study for it. I was just like, yeah, I'll just take it. It can't be that bad. It's just a test, right? So I took the LSAT. I applied to one law school,
Wow.
and I was like, if I'm supposed to get in, I will get in. And so there were only two schools that I could go to at the time based on what I wanted to do. I wasn't
Mhm.
graduating with my MBA until November, and I wanted to start law school in January as opposed to the next semester. And so there were only two schools. I think the other one was in like Minnesota, and I was already in Providence. I had had enough cold, and so this little girl from Jamaica was like, enough. So, I mean, San Francisco, I went to law school in San Francisco, and it wasn't like it was, warm all year round, but it was definitely not
It was
snow.
not
So,
Minnesota.
no, it was not.
That's
So
a whole new
that's where I ended up.
definition of cold.
Right. So that was the journey into law school. It was never, ever a desire of mine.
Wow. And then you went on to be a litigator. You were a trial lawyer and you did that for decades
Hmm.
and have since branched out into a number of other different ventures, including being a businesswoman and a professional speaker, and just somebody that I think a lot of women and young girls look up to.
Aw.
So I know that in your professional speaking, and you're also TEDx alum,
Hmm.
you talk about bias, stereotypes, superficial assumptions. You went through business school, you went to law school, not just as a woman, but as a Black woman.
Yep.
How did this shape both your views and your experiences?
It shaped it a lot. So, I started practicing law when I was 25. So I was still a young woman. I was a young single woman with a single mother at the time. And, I was lucky that, again, my mom had been working in the legal industry for a long time by that point. And one of the things that she taught me was to make sure that I treated every single person with respect, from whoever was in the staff, the janitors, whoever, all the way up to the judge, to treat them with respect. And so when I went into that space, I went in there as a respectful person. And so I think it garnered respect from other people. And so I earned their respect. But obviously, there's always the friction, and
Hmm.
some of the things that I experienced, as a Black woman lawyer going into court and being thought of as everything else except the lawyer, right?
Hmm.
Even introducing myself to the court as the lawyer and being asked, well, where's the lawyer? And that happened as recently as a few years ago when
Yeah.
I was in court. And the judge asked me, so where's the lawyer? I'm like, I just told you, I'm the lawyer, right?
It's
So,
it's amazing, how and by well-meaning, well-intentioned individuals sometimes make that mistake, and I think that's why it's called unconscious, right? Because they just don't even they something in there they couldn't even hear that you were the lawyer, that you were the attorney. I'm
yeah.
going to pause. I'm sorry. I'm going to pause for 1 second. I just noticed that on Clubhouse that you're muted. So unmute yourself. So I think we were capturing me blabbering on and then I think not you.
Oh, wow. This whole time they haven't heard me.
Okay, so just to reset, we see Pamela and Claudia in the room on Clubhouse. We are conducting a podcast interview with Kelly Charles Collins, and we will open it up for questions towards the end of that. So, thank you for bearing with us. We're trying this out for the first time, and it's
Sorry,
okay.
Claudia and Pamela. They
Okay,
know some
back
of
to
the
the
story.
that's all right. Back to the podcast. So, tell me about some instances earlier on, even obviously this is happening even now or recently once you are in practice as an attorney, but what kept you from throwing in the towel when bias and stereotypes would be thrown your way even as early as a student or a candidate getting into law or getting into business school?
Because I've always known who I was, and I've always known my power. And so your opinion of me is not my business, right? So I will never let what you think, or if you think that I am not the attorney, I am the court reporter, whatever, that can't impact me in the sense that I'm going to throw in the towel. You don't have that power over me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I always know that I belong everywhere I am. So when I am in a space, if I say to you, I'm the attorney, and you say, okay, where's the attorney? I'm just going to correct you, right? But you're not going to you don't have enough power to then have me remove myself from the profession or remove myself from a space. And so I think that that's important. And one of the things too is that being a lawyer was what I did for a living. It's not who I am as a person. So by you doing that, whether you're doing it intentionally or unintentionally, it doesn't have the impact on me that if you intended it to have some type of degrading or dehumanizing experience, it can't, because I don't identify as that title. I identify as Kelly. So, you know, as I was going through my profession and experiencing these things, it doesn't mean that it didn't impact me, right? In the last few years, one day I was in the kitchen in our law office bawling because I had just had enough. Like there was just all this stuff going on with some of my white male colleagues opposing counsel, and I had just had it. And so, I broke down crying. My office was like, "What is going on? We've never seen you like this." So it does impact you,
Mhm.
but it would never impact me to the point that I would quit, because then they would have power over me, and that's not going to happen.
I think we need to somehow summarize all of that and put it on a little like laminated card so that we can give it to all these women who are going into traditionally male dominated fields so that they know that they can hang on to their power and that they can
Yeah.
hang on to who they are despite these challenges going into whatever career they choose.
Yeah. It's a
Uh,
test, right? It's a test, and you have to learn to navigate those spaces, and it's not easy, and it's also your personality. So my personality is that way, that I am going to speak back. I'm going to, put you in your place. I'm not going to allow you to do that. And so I do think it's not as easy. I say it, and it's, for me it seems easy, but I understand that it's not as easy for some women.
there's a lot of talk of untitling lately, right, for women. And for example, the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, I
Mhm.
think just the stripping of her PhD title from her in the public arena, I think it's has kind of garnered a lot of conversation about this. And I know in medicine, oftentimes there is a lot of talk of, oh, I want to connect with my patients, so I always use my first name to introduce myself. But a lot of other women physicians say, I am Dr. So and so for exactly the reason that you're talking about, where we're often assumed
Mhm.
to be everything but.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with all the people who you work around who do amazing work, whether it is the paralegal or, a clerk or whatever,
Right.
and for us, whether it is nutrition in the nutrition department in the hospital or janitorial services or our nursing department, everybody plays an important role, but the point is, I think, not to strip us of what we have earned and who we are
Yeah.
in our careers.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and it's important for the people who we are interacting with to kind of know who they're talking to, for their own benefit,
Mhm.
for it to be an effective conversation or trial for that matter, right?
Right. Right.
So I would love to talk about parenthood and career. I understand that you are a mom of a boy, I guess now a man,
A
right?
man. A
I'm
21-year-old.
Oh boy, I'm a boy mama too. And I would love to get some of your insights on parenthood and career, that myth of work-life balance, and how you navigated that, and how you also eh, broke down stereotypes of what it means to be a working mom.
That's a lot.
I know. I'm sorry. I
That's
tend to do
okay.
that. I
That's all
tend to
right.
lump five questions into one. I'm so sorry. We
No,
could
it's
start with
okay.
one part.
No, 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 it's okay. So I got pregnant when I was 20, and it was right before I was supposed to start my MBA degree. And so obviously thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Right? And the am I going to do this included, am I going to keep the baby? Am I going to go to school? Or, is it going to be an either or? And I decided that it wasn't going to be either or, it was going to be and. Right? So I made that decision that I was going to have my baby and I was going to get my MBA degree. And after that, I was going to go to law school. And so I had my son when I was 21. I finished my MBA. But in between that time, so I'm 20, 21 having the baby. When I'm 20, I'm pregnant, I'm working, I'm going to school. When I had him, same thing. I was making $17,000 a year. So that came down to like maybe about $340 a week. So imagine
Yeah.
now I'm 21, $340 a week. I have to have it. I'm paying for a child, right? And having to take care of a child, and I'm in grad school, and it didn't work out, right? It doesn't calculate.
Mhm.
$340 does
Mhm.
not calculate to taking care of all of those things. And so, I ended up having to get government assistance to help me to make sure that he had milk and juice and, the things that he needed. And there were days where I could not afford childcare. And so childcare was under my desk. I would take him in his carrier and I would take him to work and I would put him under my desk. And I was fortunate at that time to have a female boss who just acted like that was normal. Right. The first time she saw him under the desk, she was just like, okay. And I explained to her what was going on. And so I was lucky, our little section, it was all women. And they just decided that they were going to be the village. And so they
That's
helped
awesome.
me, with him being under the desk. And I would leave there. I would work all day, leave there, go to school at night. And he would sit on top of my desk. Now, my teacher, my professor was not as friendly about the situation. But she had no choice because that's how it
Yeah.
was going to show up, right? I
Right.
was a mom, I worked, and I had to go to school, so he was there with me, and I had my cousins who helped me. But so I was lucky that I was surrounded by my family still when I was in school. I had cousins who went to school with me, my sorority sisters were there. So I had a village to help me to move through these spaces. And then when I decided to go to law school, I had to make another decision because here I am, my son's
Mhm.
1.5, I think, at the time,
Mhm.
and I was going to California for law school. So how was I going to do that as a single mom? And so the other decision that I had to make, again, because I wasn't going to be either or, it was going to be and. My mom and my sister sat me down and said, that is something that you need to do. We will take care of him here in Florida while you go to
Wow.
California.
Wow.
Yeah. So they raised him for me while I was in law school. I went to law school. I finished law school early. I finished law school in 2.5 years because I had to come back. I
Mhm.
had somebody to come back to and to take care of. And, just really went head on into my profession. But because I was a trial lawyer from the very beginning, I had long days,
Mhm.
right? And so, even coming back, when I came back, my son didn't really know, who I was in terms of where my role was in parenting.
Mhm.
And then I didn't get to come back and then go full on into that. I came back, took the bar, started working. And so then there was still that separation.
Mhm.
And it wasn't easy, but it was necessary.
Right. Right. And I mean, that sounds like that was a very, very difficult decision to make, and you were, I imagining, kind of able to look beyond the trees and see the forest and kind of look ahead to the future in ultimately making that decision,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and so I knew that in order for me to make the life for him to not be making $17,000 a year, to
Mhm.
not be told at making $17,000 a year that I didn't qualify for food stamps because I made too much money, that I didn't qualify for childcare assistance because I made too much money, to having my car repossessed because I didn't have enough money,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I saw that there was a better way, that I could create a better life for us. And what made it easier is that I wasn't leaving him with strangers,
Mhm.
right? I was leaving him with the woman who raised me, my sister who basically raised me too. I was leaving him in hands of people who I knew would do nothing but love him and take care of him.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that made it easier.
And were you able to bridge that relationship when you came back? And how did you do that?
It just took time. I mean, like I said, I worked crazy, crazy hours. And so, I would, when I had time, when I
Mhm.
could, I would, go to sporting events, and
Mhm.
I would, coach. But it was so funny because for a while, the kids had no idea who I was. They knew my mom because she was always there. And they were like, oh, that's your mom? When they would see me, oh, that's your mom? And so, I would try to be more involved in his sports and doing those types of things, but it
Mm.
wasn't, I mean, it just really wasn't easy. I started as a public defender, so the
Yeah.
first 3 years of my life, my career as a lawyer, and then I transitioned to an employment lawyer. And again, I've been a trial lawyer the entire time, so my days were ridiculous.
I'm going to reset the room real
Okay.
quick for Clubhouse because I see some new faces. We're continuing with our podcast interview here with Kelly Charles Collins. And so thank you for listening in. Those that are in the room, we will open up the room for hand raising towards the end, probably in about 15 minutes or so, 15 or 20 minutes. So thank you for listening in. We're not recording the room, we're recording offsite on Zoom. So thank you for sharing that with me. It makes me think about, and especially since the pandemic started, so many people were working from home and being on Zoom and even on the Clubhouse app where you and I first connected. We hear kids in the background, and it really has made me think about how we all can and should be unapologetic about having the noise of happy kids and sometimes not so happy kids in
Right.
the background. And a lot of times I do hear, whether it's in Zoom meetings or on the Clubhouse app, people will say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, my kids are here," and I love it when people maybe acknowledge it but don't apologize for it.
Yeah.
And, I think it really has brought that into the forefront where, you hear a lot of men too, but you hear also a lot of women in these audio or video work settings with their kids in the background. And now that the guys are also working from home, then you're also hearing the kids there too. And I love being unapologetic about it because that's real life.
Hmm.
That
And
is
that's how I
real
was
life.
when I took him to school, right? I was just
Yeah.
like, I'm here, he's here. So
We're
if you don't
package
like it,
deal.
that's, yeah, if you don't like it, that's too bad. But I'm here and he's here. So, I think, and I do love when people say don't apologize, because what is there to apologize for? That is your life, right? And, you're a mom. And if you're a mom, you do what you have to do. So that's why he was under my desk. That's why he was on top of my desk. That's why, all the things. You just do what you need to do in order to move forward in life, and, not worry about what other people think about it.
It makes me think of, just the advice of kind of controlling what you can and letting go of what you can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you approach, switching gears a little bit, how do you approach disappointments or failure or perceived failure? What's your mindset when you come across these situations?
It depends. Sometimes I get really pissed.
Yeah.
Other times I might cry. Sometimes I just get very quiet. I
Mhm.
just get very pensive, and start to think about why. But one of the things that I do, is I sit, but I don't stay. And what I mean by that is, if there is a lesson, or if, people call them failures, I call them lessons,
Mhm.
mistakes, whatever.
Mhm.
If that happens, what I do is sit to acknowledge that that's happened, right? To acknowledge what is going on, what mistake did I make, what misstep, what is the lesson that I need to learn. But I don't stay there, because if I stay there, there's no forward movement, there's no progress. And it's interesting because over the past couple of days, I've been in that space, right? And I've been in the space and out of the space, in the space and out of the space, because as I'm growing, there's breaking happening. And so things are breaking and I'm being challenged because I'm being pushed, forward. And so I've had the crying, I've had the anger, I've had the frustration, I've had the, sitting quiet. But all of those things are moments in time as opposed to sustained, long, drawn out, oh my God, for 5 days, you won't hear from
Mhm.
me kind of thing. It won't be that. I will sit there because I need to figure out what is going on. And that's with things that are good and things that are bad, to acknowledge where you are in the space, but you can't stay there. You have to move forward.
I think so often, women and men who are in these high powered positions and very high functioning people will often kind of fill their schedules. And I think that we often don't schedule enough just thinking time into our days and our weeks where we just kind of block off time for nothing because it's like whatever is going on, whether it's good or bad in your mind or lessons, for example, we are often just so go, go, go. And I know that I have that tendency too. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
just got to schedule a little bit of nothing in my day.
Yeah. I'm bad about that. I'm a workaholic, which is not a good mantle to take on. So it's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a workaholic. But I have to acknowledge that I am. And what I found is that I was coming in, especially now because everybody's at home. I would come in my office and I would be here like at the, 8, 9 o'clock. Well, not even 8 o'clock because I don't get up that early. 9 o'clock. And I would be here, but I would sit in my office till midnight. I'm a night owl, so I would sit.
Mm.
And I realized the other day that you've got to do something like around your exercise. You got to do something to keep your body moving and keep your mind moving. So, I've started waking up and using Clubhouse, leveraging Clubhouse as the vehicle to help me do that. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning at 7:45, I host a room on Clubhouse so that we can just walk, talk, and collabosource, as I call it. And so that's the way that I have built in kind of that time. But yeah, there is, we do have to build our times into our calendars like we've built everybody else in.
So you, as we talked about already, you're a trial attorney and a
Yes.
partner also at two law firms. And where else did you also observe unconscious bias? We talked about being mistaken for the not lawyer, everything but the lawyer.
Mhm.
Where have you had both unconscious bias and where have you had outright bias? And what did you do about it?
Well, I think for most people, like for probably most Black people, I've been called the N word. That
Hmm.
happened when I was younger. I was called the
Yeah.
N word, and I didn't necessarily know too much about what the implications of that were,
Yeah.
because when I moved to the United States I didn't know about racism. So I was 9 years old, I moved here, I didn't know about racism. I knew about colorism, I knew
Hmm.
about classism, so the
Hmm.
haves and the have nots,
Hmm.
coming from Jamaica. So
Yeah.
I don't think it had the impact on me at that time as a young child, that it would now, understanding what all of that means.
Right.
And throughout life we have in whether it's being in a store or being in a restaurant and being looked over even though you're standing there, having people look over you. I was in a store one day, this happened many years ago. I was walking in a clothing store and they were following me around the store, and I was like,
Wow.
yeah, there's
So
nothing in here that I would need to steal.
do you turn around and just say, "May I help you?" Or do you just say, "Follow me, whatever,
Sometimes I
do
just
what you
look.
want?"
Yeah, sometimes I might just look at you so that you know that I see that you're doing whatever it is that you're
Mhm.
doing. Um, the like at work, when things have happened to me at work, then I will definitely confront that person, because I think in those spaces you have to let people know or else they'll continue to do it. And
Yep.
one of the other reasons that I would do it, especially in the work environment, is because I knew that there were women who experience this every single day, who could not, for any number of reasons, right, respond, who could. So I knew that I had to speak up, right, and I had to be a voice, And I never say voice for the voiceless because I don't think we're ever voiceless. We just can't use our voices sometimes. We can't
Mhm.
amplify our voices sometimes because of different circumstances.
Mhm.
So, mostly in those circumstances. Generally, if I'm out in the public, you would have to really do something that is just vile for me to take you on, because again, you don't have that much power over me to impact my life. Now when I'm at work and you're impacting my work environment and my space, or you are doing something that would impact my integrity or my character or my reputation, that's something that's not gonna fly, and I am gonna say something to you. But if I'm walking down the street and somebody was to say something to me, or some, if I'm in the grocery store and somebody gets in front of me, I might say, I know you saw me, right? I might say something like that. Am I
Mhm.
gonna get into a back and forth with you? No, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't, you just, you're just not that important to me to, you can't ruin my day that much.
Right.
But if it was something very egregious, then that might be a whole nother story.
Right. Is it actually worth your time and energy?
Yeah.
How much impact is that going to make? And I could see how in a professional environment where if something is not said or done, then it's going to happen again, and enough not to you, then the next person who comes
Yeah.
along.
Yeah,
And
I had a situation, Nancy, sorry. I had a situation where I had an opposing counsel. I was the only female attorney on the case, and there were like four male attorneys, all white male attorneys. And this attorney told me to shut up. He got in my face. He did all kinds of stuff. And the other males said nothing until the very last time that he yelled at me in court. He yelled at me in the hall,
wow.
did all kinds of stuff, and I would stand up to him, but the men would not, until finally one of them finally stood up because he got so close to my face. He was towering over me in my face, and that attorney was a younger attorney, and he was just like, that's enough, like, get out of her face. But you have to, in those spaces, stand up for yourself as much as you can, because otherwise it continues. And because they didn't say anything and they never stopped him, he thought that he had their buy-in, right? So they were complicit
Yeah.
in it. And so I always say, inaction is indifference, and in our silence lies complicity. And so
Mhm.
their silence emboldened him to continue to do what he was doing.
And I love that you talk about that, your advocacy for bystander intervention in your speaking on bias. And that's something that I think is so important. Just having advocacy, not just from fellow women, not just from fellow people of color, but people who may not be part of whatever group you're part of. I think that's so important, and that's something that I think about and talk about a lot, both in orthopedics and in medicine as well. We have our locker rooms, right? So you got the
Yeah.
women that go in the women's locker room, the men that goes in the men's locker room, and I always say, who's going to speak up on behalf of you? Not that you need somebody to protect you or speak for you, but who's going to say this is wrong in the guys locker room when you're not in there? And
Right.
so I think it's so important not just to have a community of those who are similar to you, but building those bridges so that we can ultimately institute larger cultural change. And that's something that I feel strongly about, not just within my own field, but also just having those conversations so that, in any field where you see different underrepresented groups have a voice, not just their own, but of those around them, to call
Yeah.
out what's wrong.
Yeah, I call it the spectrum of accountability. So I think of the perpetrator, the accomplice, the bystander, the ally, and the advocate, right? So the
Hmm.
perpetrator is obviously the person who's doing it. The accomplice, they may just be like them, right? Who just sit by and help the thing along the way, or maybe do something, or help in some way, so that you're the accomplice. The bystander just sits there, like, and just watches, like they're the neutral party, and there should never be neutrality in situations like that. And then we have allies. So a lot of people talk about being allies, but a lot of people are passive allies. They're the people that if somebody called you the N-word, or somebody yelled in your face, or did something that was whatever, in the bathroom, they may, say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you," or whisper to you, or like, kind of give you the eye so that you know that they see you, but they're not going to put themselves out there for you.
Right.
And so whenever I train on these topics, I try to get people to be advocates, because advocates will speak up for you. They'll amplify your voice. They will be the person in the locker room when you're not there who will say something that's not right. You don't do that. And so I always try to push people towards advocacy, because it is an action word. You have to take action. You have to do something. And what I explain to people is that you don't have to be the hero that saves the day. So you don't have to put on your superhero cape and like, "Oh, I'm going to save the whole day." No,
Mhm.
you just have to be a hero every day, which means that you need to do something. Silence is never an option,
I
right? And
love that.
so whether it's, in my TEDx, I talk about, there's so much room for action between nothing and death. And so when I think about, nothing, and I think about death, there are things I'm not going to die for. Right.
Mhm.
And when you look at what happened around George Floyd and all the marches and all that stuff, I'm not marching. I'm not a marcher, so I'm not going out there to march. But what I did know that I could do is facilitate conversations around the topics to help people to gain some understanding. They don't have to gain agreement, but to gain understanding. And so I used what is my superpower, right,
Yep.
which is to create safe spaces, to do my thing, which is between nothing and death. Right. And
Yep.
so every day people need to think about, what is that thing that I can do every single day between nothing and death that will allow me to change a circumstance that I am witnessing.
Absolutely. And we can all create change and we can all make an impact in our own different ways. So I would like to ask you about ladies who leverage.
Okay.
Tell me about the birth of Ladies Who Leverage, and second part of the question, because I like
That's
multi-part
all right.
questions. Why is community important?
So, Ladies Who Leverage, my love, Ladies Who Leverage started last March during the pandemic, when we didn't have a way to get together. And also, it was my response to traditional networking. I am an ambivert, so I can speak to thousands and millions. It doesn't matter how many people that I speak to. I do not do well going into a networking situation where I have to intervene into some conversation or find somebody to go talk to. I don't do well in those situations. And I don't like the small talk, right? I don't like the small talk. I don't like the business card bingo, and the fact that, you're trained basically that when you go into these situations that you can't ask for the things that you want, right? So we know we go to networking to connect, to find out if there's something beneficial, mutually beneficial, but we're told, go, no, make a relationship, ask about their dog and their family and all that stuff. I didn't want to do all that. And so I decided to create a space where women did not have to do that, where women could come and ask for what they wanted and what they needed to be able to move their business forward or to move forward in their career. And so the mission of Ladies Who Leverage is to empower women to leverage their expertise, their resources, and their relationships to build their business, their brand, and their badassery. And when we're talking about women in business, often we hear that women, can't get along, they can't do anything together. And our stand is that we don't compete, we collabosource. And collabosource is our way of networking and working with each other. And I wanted to show women that you can do that. You can work together. You can share your hopes and dreams in a space that is safe, that is non-judgmental, that is supportive, and that women will cheer for you, right? And
Hmm.
cheer for your success and do the things that they need to do to help you to really move forward. And if you're having a bad day, to lift you up,
Hmm.
right? And so there is so much power in community and power in association. And the women have done remarkable things. They've written books, they've raised their prices, they've had new offers, they've done six-figure months, they've done so many things, they've been on media, they've done so many things because of the power of community, right? The power of being in a space where you see your sisters, doing well, where that if you come to them with an idea, that they're going to help you with the resources. They're going to help you with the connections that you need. They're going to help you with support. They'll just show up. The four women who are sitting right now in Clubhouse, Those four women are all ladies who leverage.
Awesome.
They're all ladies who leverage. And Tanya is my dear friend who I've known for 20 something years. We started out as lawyers together back in Miami. So this is community, right? So I put out that, I'm going to be on your podcast and this is what we're doing. And these ladies have shown up. That is the power of ladies who leverage, right? To have women take the time out of their day. They're all busy women, right? To say, I am going to go and support you. So when I think about community, that's what I think about, like the pure, genuine caring and support that we have created in Ladies Who Leverage.
That is awesome. That is so needed. I would like to ask you, and of course, I could chat with you for hours. I know you're busy, so we have to
Okay.
limit it to our hour, but I always like to finish up with my guests and ask if they had one piece of advice for a woman who wanted to thrive in a male-dominated field. What would that one piece of advice be?
To own your power, to unapologetically own your power.
I love it. I think that'll take anyone far. Well, Kelly, I thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Maybe we'll have to do a part two someday because there's
No
so
problem.
much to chat about. I appreciate you. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, and so we're gonna at this point we'll wrap. That's the podcast portion of it, and I'm going to head over to Clubhouse. I'm going to reset the room. I see you four ladies there. Thank you so much for being here. We this is experimental, so thanks for bearing with us. I'm going to go ahead, Kelly, and I'm going to take my headphones off for the Zoom part so I can hear on the phone now and turn the volume up there and we'll chat on there.
Okay, let me turn this up a little.
And volume up so I can hear. I am going to turn on hand raising. I sure hope that among the ladies here that you'll have some questions or comments. I would love to entertain questions and have Kelly answer that, or even if you want to just pipe in and just say how much your experience in Ladies Who Leverage have impacted you. I would love to hear about that as well. So I believe I have done this correctly. Hand raising is on.
Let's
We've
see.
got Pamela. All right. Let's see. Sent you an invite to speak. There she is. Hello, Pamela. Thanks for being here. I'll
Hey,
mute myself.
Pam.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, ladies. Great podcast. Great. I really enjoyed it, even though we missed the first part of it, Kelly. But
Sorry. I was on
no,
mute.
you go ahead, Kelly.
No, I said I was on mute. I muted. Instead of just turning down my volume, I muted myself.
Okay, first I thought it was intentionally, but then I was like, well, I don't think that's supposed to be. But of course, we know you because we are in Ladies and Leverage. And for me, it's a great community, Kelly. You're the mastermind behind it, and I really appreciate it. Well, at first, let me introduce myself because the other ladies know, but Nancy, you don't know who I am. I'm Pamela Burkhead Jones. I'm a career strategist, and I'm with Ladies Who Leverage. I actually joined at the beginning of the year, but I've been pretty much following the group for a couple of months before I joined. It has been the best thing that I've ever done because I've met so many great ladies, and we've collaborated, and we're doing different things together. And I could be more not more than satisfied that I joined. So I'm happy. It's been 3 months now, and I can see so many other things that's happened being a part of the group. And Kelly is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's all I have.
Oh, thanks, Pamela.
Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate you being here. I love it. And so, Kelly, how big is your group? How big is the community?
Right now we have, I think, 802 women.
Wow, that is awesome. And how often do you have events or gatherings? And now I'm assuming it's mostly virtual. Virtual. How do you structure it?
So there are two parts of the group. One is just the free Facebook group, so everybody's in that, and then we have a paid membership that's called Investors. So ladies who leverage investors, and we meet the second and fourth Thursday of every month, and we have what are called summits. And so we get together and talk about what's going on in our businesses, in our life. What do you need help with? How can we hold you accountable? How can we help you? And then we also have monthly expert roundtables where experts come into the group and teach. And again, that's part of being an investor. So those parts are just for the investors, and then the Facebook group is for everyone.
That's awesome. I would like to know if I know we have a few minutes left before you have to go for your next meeting, but Claudia, Tangela, and Tanya, do you have any questions or comments? I'm gonna put on the heat and see if anyone will come up and
Y'all can come up
the
and ask me
stage.
anything.
Anything you want to say here?
And one of the things that we're doing, and all of these ladies, yeah, all the ladies here, for Women's History Month, we put on a series called What's the Tea? And it's real women having real conversations. So the past two episodes, we've talked about self care and women in work. And so this Friday, we'll be talking about empowerment. And next Friday, we'll be talking about relationships. So that's one of the other things as far as Ladies Who Leverage is to get the women involved and expose them to the world. And so that's one of the ways that we've done that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up the room, actually, Pamela, since you're on here and able to speak, I realize that sometimes people will listen, like myself, I'll listen in when I can't necessarily chime in. So I won't put any more pressure on the listeners. But Pamela, if I could ask you from your end, I knew in the beginning we had Kelly muted inadvertently, but can you tell me from the user interface perspective, how did the rest of the podcast sound to you?
It was great. Everything was great. Kelly really did a wonderful job with answering. Even though we missed the first part of it, we kind of can put the add the dots together, and everything was great. I really enjoyed it. So it sounded great on our end.
Okay, good. And there wasn't any weird sound delay when we were speaking to each other. That was
No
okay?
weird sound delay.
Okay.
I think maybe on our end, I'm not sure where you had it. I just heard a little tapping. That could be something that you may be doing on your desk, but it won't come through on the podcast.
That was probably me clicking on my notes. So
We've only heard it. I'm sure you won't hear it in the podcast.
no, I have a microphone for the podcast, so we won't pick that up. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And as I mentioned, this was something I usually record on Zoom, and since I had met Kelly on Clubhouse, I was like, hey, do you want to experiment with this? I think it'll be an intriguing way to utilize the platform. So it sounds like we did okay. So probably I'll be putting some more live interviews up as I'm recording them. And this one will be in season 4. I record way ahead because I'm a planner. So it'll probably be a couple months before this one's released. But thank you all for being here for that sneak peek. And Kelly, I thank you again for that amazing conversation. So many, I always ask for that piece of advice at the end, but there were so many pearls of advice like through the entire podcast. It was great. I really
I
enjoyed
have a
it.
question for you
Yes.
about the logistics. So I usually record my podcast on Zoom. So
Hmm.
did you just open up the room? I know that we opened the room and then just talk and just let it go into your phone?
Yes.
Or did
So I
yeah?
basically just I opened up the room. I just had my phone in front of me because
Okay.
it picks up as if we were on a speakerphone. And what I did was I just turned off hand raising so that I wouldn't deal with any pop-ups during that time. And I'm not sure how good I was about regularly saying, we're recording, we're going to turn on the hand
It's
raising
okay.
later, and then I have to let my podcast editor know to just edit out those parts from the actual podcast. But and then when we decided to open it up to hand raising, I just did that, and I'm still recording on Zoom.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think we would repurpose any of that for the actual podcast, but just to experiment, I left it on.
Yeah, and then just so that your next guest knows, don't do like Kelly. Don't hit mute. Just turn the volume so I turned the volume all the way down and I hit mute.
Well, I think it's habit, right? When you get on podcast, if you're
Yeah.
not speaking into podcast, or when you get on Clubhouse, you're not speaking into it. The habit is to mute.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay. That's all
Yeah.
right. We
I'm
we
glad we
As
caught
long
it
as you
though. Yeah, I'm glad we caught it. And they were actually texting me, but I had
oh
my I had my notifications off so I didn't see it because whenever I get on these things, I turn everything off and I didn't. So then when you said it and I looked, they had been texting me to tell me they couldn't hear me.
No harm, no foul. That was just the beginning. And so, ladies and guests here in
They
this
can
room,
catch it when they
check out the
watch.
actual podcast. We'll catch that. You'll be able to catch that whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Kelly, I will let you go on with your busy, busy day. And
Thank
I
you.
thank you so much. And I will keep you posted as to when this will be released in a couple of months.
Okay.
And I look forward to staying in touch.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you again. Bye
All right.
bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks everybody for being
Bye,
here.
everybody.